Hello, this is Allison Co. I'm a hypnotherapist practicing out of Portland, Oregon, the United States of America. And let's see, I will be transcribing a session today or reading a session today that I've already spent time transcribing. This session is with a psychic, an amazing woman. And let's see, she lives in Hawaii now. Gone through a rough year last year, really rough time, and had kind of been questioning how her role, how her job is changing, what her purpose is here, wanting to leave, not really wanting to be here for a long time, and really wondering, about other humans and why she's never really felt like being here, where that stuff comes from. A lot of stuff that can really help those of you out there who are struggling with the same issues. Now, warning, this one is a long one. And I've even trimmed out some of the things that, are really more personal to her and wouldn't really help the collective. And if I had left those in, it would have been like 2 hours long. So as I begin to record this, I have no idea how long it will be. All I know is this is my second take. I started this earlier this morning. This is now 6:30 in the evening. I started this early in the morning, recording it, got an hour and a half in and had to stop just so I could have my own today's session with another completely different client. And I was like, damn it, I had to cut it off. Anyway, so I have gone back and gone to the transcript, trimmed out some of the things. And one thing I wanted to give you a heads up about, though, sorry, I'm going to be kind of verbose here. One of the things I wanted to give you a heads up about, though, that's really an interesting process in this session in particular, is when the client hears something that she may know that she's ultimately going to struggle with, right? And she's kind of processing it. Now, for most clients, they're not going to do that because it's not a part of their process. What we're dealing with is a person who is used to having these kind of conversations with these higher beings, right? Because of her work, she's very connected. And it's actually a really good process for her to go through during this hypnosis. So it may sound kind of like when you're in a class and you're learning a subject and a student keeps raising their hand and asking questions, you're like, oh, would you just let the teacher talk? It can sound like that, but really you'll actually learn something from her kind of bantering back and forth with these beings that she's talking to throughout the session. We have Syrians, we have Lyrans, we have Venusians, we have ascended master Jesus himself coming in this session. So it's an interesting one, chock full of information. And I found that I think this could help a lot of people out there. So thank you to my client for trusting me to give her a session, and for allowing us to share it today, and for being herself throughout this session, really, and going through her process. All right, shall we begin? Okay. And it opens up with, I'm outdoors. I see sand under my feet and a river close by. I see a spaceship in the sky. I see many of them. How does that make you feel? Protected and safe, supported. Let's go ahead and have you stomp your feet on the ground. When you're ready, I'd like you to tell me about your feet and walk me up your legs. Ooh, my feet look extra long, like 13-inch feet, but the toes are really long too. And I have these long legs that kind of remind me of the Avatar movie. What color is your skin? It's dark brown. Okay, let's keep moving up. What else do you notice? Well, first I thought I was male, but as I'm moving up, I realize I'm a female. I'm wearing a gold skirt and a tighter top, and I have really long arms and a tiara kind of thing on my head. And my nose, my face looks like a lion kind of, but I'm standing upright. Very good. And are you carrying anything? I'm carrying a gold box, and inside of it is some jewelry that's made out of something red. And there's also a key, a gold key. Okay. And what do you feel these items symbolize or are meant for? They're meant for her, the special one. It's a gift. What can you tell me about this special one? She came to help us, and she's filled with knowledge and wisdom. She has a lot of information for us, but they're going to kill her. They're going to kill her. Okay. Can I ask you a few questions about her? Yes. She came to help you, and she has a lot of wisdom and knowledge. Where did she come from? She came from Venus to help us. And what did she help you with? She helped us with the buildings and the land and the connection from here to her home. What would have happened if she hadn't helped you? We would have forgotten. We would have forgotten why we're here. I see. And the other beings would have taken over. She is creating a grid system from us to her, a high-frequency grid system that radiates off the top of the buildings straight to her, forming around this area, and the others want their grid system to form around the area, but she's helping us. And you mentioned they're going to kill her. Who are they? They look like machines, like the Star Wars movies, those machines with the long legs. They're also here. We control some of them, but some of them are learning to control themselves. They helped us to build it. And why do they want to kill her? They want to take over. She has too much power, and they want the power. They want to be in control. They want to kill all of us, or control us like we controlled them. We gave them jobs, we programmed them, but we also gave them love. We gave them hope. We gave them dreams that they never had before. But they don't know how to feel loved. They want to feel loved. They think if they tune into us, they will feel love through us. To them, they don't realize it has to come from within. They can't take it. She's helping to assist them, but they don't understand. They're thinking she's lying to them because they don't understand. They think that she wants to take control over the whole world. They think what they want to think. They want to take over the whole world, and they think that's what she's trying to do. But she's just trying to empower us and try to give love through everybody. And they think that she's trying to overpower them. They have a leader, and their leader is now programming them. When before we programmed them, they used to work for us, but we also love them. Is there a way to find any balance between what you want and what they want in this world? I see this loving frequency coming from the right and this dark energy coming from the left. The light is coming in and trying to control and take over and help people. And the dark is trying to program and do the opposite from the left. And it comes from a really dark place off in the distance on another planet. These beings used to all get along. The light still loves, but the darker to the left wants to take control. The light got so powerful, so bright, so beautiful, and the dark just couldn't figure it out. So they tried to have power and control another way. They used to be related, but they're not anymore, or they don't feel so. Okay, what happens next in this place? The light from the right was taking over, but then the dark did. It became very, very dark outside. I can no longer see the sun. I can't even see the stars. I can't even see home. I can't even see her. I can't see where I'm from. There's just a shield over us. So she was going to set a grid. She was, but they did. They set the grid. And now it's just dark. We used to have these beams of light coming off of our heads straight to where we're from, and they all got disconnected, those umbilical cords to who we were, and it severed the umbilical cords, and now it's lining us up and it's in control of us. And then there's these beings that just came on. They look like robots. They don't feel like they have a soul. They're now taking over. And I lost my power. I lost my connection. I lost my home. I lost my family. And I'm stuck. It's okay. We're going to get you out of there. And what happens next in this place as this unfolds? And you can just observe it. You don't have to be there. They took the top off the buildings. I was in Egypt. There was an apex. There was a top. They were made of gold. They wanted the gold. They used the gold for their own use. It started dismantling our system, our power system when they took them, the grid system. The apex held our grid in place and they took it. We were able to take some and hide them before they got to it, but not all. They have some. They then messed with the water. The water used to come all the way up to the pyramids, and they pushed the water back. We used the water for frequency, for sound, for vibration. The water delivers high energy to the world and to us through us, and they made it go away, even poisoning some of it. They added high salt content to some. How did they push the water back? Through thought, through command of water. And what happens next? I remember who I am and where I came from, but everybody else is slowly forgetting. And now this other side has a leader, but it's a false leader. It's lying to the people. It's putting fear in them so that we follow the false leader. It's taking over their power and making us worship them. They're building big statues of themselves so we can worship the statues. And everybody's just following along. I don't understand. I don't understand why they all just follow along. But like you said, they've forgotten, right? Yes. They don't know any better. So what do these statues look like that they're following and praising? They're really tall. Some of them are made of gold. Some are just made of just natural material. They look like them. It's just a big statue of them. They hid things, though, in the statue. In the belly of the statue, they hid things that are important to us in the belly of their statue. And they're convincing everybody that these statues are so important so that nobody will look there. Nobody would ever destroy the statue. They say that it's a curse or a spell if you destroy it. But our information is inside the belly. He's laughing as he's making it. He knows that many, many years down the line that people will still see these statues and think they're wonderful. But there's information in them that we need. It's right in the belly and in the head. Some of them are still hidden. Some of them are underground. Some of them are laying down and we only see their feet. Some of them connect to a tunnel under the ground. These beings sometimes walk through these tunnels from place to place and can get connection to our information. But we hid a lot of it too. We took some of it off the planet. Some of it's just hidden. They all remember, but our people forgot. That was on purpose. They wanted us to forget what they remembered. They now made it so that we have to rely on food and water. I don't know how that happened. It used to be source light. We used to get our energy from the light, but now we have to get it from food. And they're making us rely on the food. And then they're starting to control the food. And they're controlling the water. They're taking away all our power any way they can. And I'm getting smaller and smaller. I'm not as tall as I used to be, but I still remember. Before you forget, can we touch the belly of those statues? I can't reach them anymore. They're too tall, and now I'm too small. I only come up to the calf. The belly's way up there. I can't reach it, and there's too many guards surrounding it. They know that I know. They're watching me. It's not safe. And what happens next? I go off to the side. I leave. I find my people. I find those that remember. And we decide to live alone. We build a city and replace the wall around it. And through voice, through story, through sound, through music, we remind each other and those that come onto the earth. The wall creates a sound frequency around it. Sound can create, it can destroy, it can harm, it can heal. These machines don't like the sound. If they come close to us, we activate the sound frequency and it pushes them away. We are safe in this wall. We are hidden in this wall, but we're more powerful in this wall. We're powerful together and we work together. There's a pyramid and we have our own place where we go in. We can go up or down in the pyramid, and there are tunnels under this pyramid as well. Some of it goes to the water. We hid things down in these tunnels. We're also growing some grass. They tried to even take away our grass, our trees, our beauty, our butterflies. But they're here. They're here with us now. We found a way through this shield to connect back to our star. We are connecting to the star Sirius. We see Venus there too, but it's just Sirius that we're connecting to now. We lost our feminine energy, and the more masculine energy is coming in us, but that's okay. We need to fight. We need the power. I love this walled city, this place. This is my home. My people are here. How many people are there with you? 2,552. But there's a few people that are pregnant, so there'll be more soon. And there's more to come. We are growing. And do you call yourself something? Anything? We call ourselves the sacred ones. Now they call us the Essenes, but we are the sacred ones. Well, we also call ourselves the ones that remember. We are the ones that remember. And what happens now in this place? We continue to work together and we train and teach the children. We're trying to expand our wisdom and knowledge. Some of us moved up to Southern Europe and over to England back when it was attached. We lived there too. We try to teach the children. The dark on the outside is getting bigger though, and they're getting more people to just follow, enslaving them. We're wondering if there's a way to free those people. We're wondering if any of us will sign up to help outside the walls. We are trying to make ourselves more powerful, but we are also hiding. We don't want them to know our plan. How does the Syrian energy that you access help with that goal of becoming more powerful, but also being protected? It reminds us of who we are, where we come from. We're just here now, but we are also just visitors. And if we remember where we're from, we remember our power and our true source of light energy. On this planet, those people building the tall castles, they're trying to tell us that they're the power, not our light energy. But by connecting to the stars, we remember where the true power comes from. It doesn't come from statues or ego or precious metals like gold and silver. It comes from this light inside of us. We are making sure we stay connected so we too remember. We remember. They're trying to create a frequency that can make it so we don't remember. And if we protect this area, this walled area, we'll always remember. and we can go home one day, and we can't go yet. There's a block between here and home. Somehow they placed a block. And is home serious? Yes, serious. There's lots of water there. We love the water. It's very playful there. We love each other. There's none of this dark energy and attempt to control. We just all work together and we love it. We want to go home. What brought you to Earth in the first place? I wanted to experience it. Earth wasn't being used or utilized. It had so much beauty, but it was just there. Nobody had gone onto it yet. There were some animals. There were really big, large animals, but it was a new planet and nobody had lived on it yet. We were seeing how we could utilize it. If we could bring it into a high vibration, if it could become one of us. I volunteered. It looked like fun. I thought I could help. We all thought we could help. I didn't expect this to happen, though. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have come. I would have stayed home. You mean you didn't expect to get trapped? No. I lived a long time. I'm really old. I've been here for over 600 years now. I'm 622 to be exact. Has your form changed during that time at all? You mentioned being kind of more of a lion-faced tall female earlier. Yes, I'm now a woman, a smaller woman. I don't really age unless I want to. It's interesting. They're taking me back 400 years ago, and I went from the lion being, and they did a ceremony, and then I became who I am now, which looks more human. They did that so I could hide. I wouldn't stick out as much before. They were killing all the lions. I'm curious, can we go back to before the ceremony? Let's go visit that. Yes. Okay, so you're still tall. While you're still tall, and in that form, can we go touch the belly of one of those statues? You can do it now. I'm pretty tall. Okay, if I put my hand on it, it forms light, and it can destroy the material. They're coming behind me. I need to stop. What would happen if you continued? I need to put a force field around me so they can't see me. Let me try again. Oh, here we go. It's a scroll. It has where we came from, who we are. There's words too. And I know if I chant the words, it'll create a high frequency onto the earth. This is good information. I need to take this back to the people. I can't really read the words yet. They're in a different language. I used to know it, but I don't know it anymore. But if I take it and I chant it with my hands in the water and with my power, it will activate the water into this sparkly frequency that moves throughout the Earth planet. And underneath the pyramids, there's water as well. And in these tunnels that just run underground, filled with beautiful water, the water's going to be coming back soon. Okay, let's get you and the scroll to safety, shall we? Okay, I'm taking it back into the walled city. I'm showing the people. They're very excited. Some of them already remembered. They remembered the words, the language, all of it. We got it away from the other people. I feel like we tone it. We sing it. It comes from the heart and from our belly. It's interesting. They hid this scroll where the power comes from within the statue. It's a way to mock us. That it's time. They're telling me it's time. We can use the words now in this power. Okay, and with the water, we can raise the frequency. Would you like to do that? Yeah. And I'm going back between where I am now to the future. I move back and forth between me now and me in the future, and even a future version. If I go far enough, that's where I like to be. The grid system around the earth is no longer there. We added so much light that it just started to deteriorate above us. There's our light. There's our home. There's the ships again. They're coming back. The water is coming back onto the planet. All the water that they moved away. I know it scared people, but they don't understand. This is for the better. I can breathe again. I can see home. The water's more beautiful. They made it dark, but it's actually more turquoise and has a sparkle to it. There's other beings that were taking metal off of our planet, and we're telling them not to do that anymore, not to take it from Earth anymore. They're telling me that where they're from, there's no sun, and the metal shines a sun onto their planet. I'm letting them know that they just have a force field around it that blocks the sun. They don't need to take from the Earth. They understand. They're giving back our metal and our source of energy onto the Earth, and it's going back into the water, and everybody's singing and chanting, including the animals. It's very powerful. And now I can go underwater. I can even breathe underwater if I want to. There are crystals that were hidden that are now coming up for everybody to see. There's land that was hidden that is now coming up, but is still surrounded by water. I moved into the Pacific. I was in Egypt before, but I no longer have a body. I can form a body if I want to, but I'm mostly light energy. I can go back in between different forms, and I can breathe underwater if I want to, or on land. It's up to me. I'm holding the same scroll. We used it here too. I like this place. It's beautiful. It feels more like home, even though it's not home. But we made it feel like home. The water is turquoise. Oh, I thought I was in the past, but I think I'm in the future. They're laughing at us because a lot of things we thought were past history are actually future. And we all thought it and was taught it the wrong way. We've just put everything in time and linear, but we're just remembering the future many times, thinking it's a past life. We're kind of all laughing about that. Some of us got it really wrong. I was wondering if you would like to interact with the Syrians now. Oh yes, I love to. There's this tube of light, and I just stand in it, and I do my toning, and I call to them. The toning is through a sound frequency, and it moves light energy all the way up through this tunnel. It's kind of like a phone line, but through light frequency and sound all the way back home. And they do a light frequency and sound back through this tube, and I can feel it. It actually carries wisdom. That's what the dark did in the day. They made us forget about this wisdom, this toning, this sound that comes through this tube. But we are remembering again, or we do remember. So I go in, I do my toning, and I connect. I can actually go straight up this tube of light, straight home if I wanted to. But sometimes we meet part way. My vibration is lower here. So to go all the way up, for some reason, it hurts my body, even though I'm from there. I'm playing here in this place. So to go too high, it actually hurts. So I'm playing this other part or role, and it hurts to bring this high energy in. So we meet part way. I go up the tube, they come down the tube, and then we talk. I love them. They are so nice. They're so pretty, lots of blue and blue eyes. They come into form so I can see them, but they really have no form. They're light frequency. It's interesting. They're just one ball of light, but then they split up into parts if they want to, or come back together. They're showing me that that's what I do. I split up into parts too, but I will be coming back together too. Have you already split up into parts? Yes, this is one of my parts right now, being split. And then I split again and again. I split many times. Would they like to tell you where your other parts are right now? They're telling me they're all over. but they're coming back together. I see this beautiful light in the sky, and the parts are starting to come back in, like little cells coming back into this big light, recalibrating. So there's less and less parts separated, and there's this big light. It looks like it's in the sky in another dimension, even above Sirius. It's beyond this galaxy. There's me right now. There's the me that's connecting to the Egypt version. And I feel like also there's one in New Zealand or the Cook Islands. There's a part of me there too. Very good. Would they like to tell you if there's anything that you should do to reconnect, or just wait for it to happen naturally? They'd like me to continue to make this umbilical cord of light between me and them stronger. They'd like me to continue to tone and remember my sound, my voice. They'd like me to eat more holistic food. And I'm laughing because I like the food here, but it's not very healthy. It just tastes good. And they're showing me to eat more greens. I understand. They're also showing me that light frequency can fill my body. I'm letting them know that I'm playing human and I like to eat. I'm being a little stubborn right now, I can tell. When they like to tell you how you can kind of switch in a gentle way to the light frequency. They're telling me that I have been stuck for so long that I feel like this is soothing me, making me happy by eating whatever I want. But if I just take a few steps forward and into the light, I will feel different. I was still feeling stuck and trapped. I didn't know that I was free. A part of me didn't know I was free. Would you like to take a few steps forward? I'm tired of being disappointed. I feel like it's too good to be true, but I would like to be home. They're taking my hands. They're moving me up. It wasn't forward. It was up. They're moving me up. I'm feeling confused because if I move up where I was before, what happens to my body? Do I disappear? I know the higher version of me knows, but there's this lower version of me that's fighting it. Where do I go? How does it affect me? I know a higher version of them knows too, but for some reason I'm playing this game, and I feel like I have to wait for everybody to get the game before I take these steps. It's exhausting. I'm tired of waiting for everybody. What would happen if you just took one step? They can tell you. I would disconnect. I feel like I have this weird spider web that was attaching me to where I was. And as I take a step forward, the spider web starts to dismantle off of me. I then see people that have already transitioned. I see my dog that has passed. I feel like I'm on a place that's not home, but has a lot of grass. Green, green grass. It's so beautiful. There aren't very many buildings, and the water is a beautiful blue, beautiful streams. You can actually drink the water here. It's safe to drink. Here, we actually get a lot of our vibration from the light frequency. Here, people remember who they are. We all work as a team. We're still playing a separation game, but a remembering of that we're separated. It's interesting that we're even playing this game in the first place, but we are. I'm curious if they'd be willing to answer a few questions about what we just witnessed. Yes. Okay. Can they explain to us when that took place, the freedom, when that can take place, and what, if anything, we can do to help that? They said it takes place when we decide to have it take place. It could happen at any time, any moment. It's us that is stopping it. It's us knowing that it can happen, but we're also stopping it, thinking it's in the future. But it can be right now, at this very moment. Can they tell us what we would need to do right now at this very moment to manifest that? We need to stop. Stop the game. Just stop. Like we're all walking and we just stop. We add that tube of light around us and we start to expand it, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, making more and more people just stop. creating this huge light that's coming from us that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's up to us when we want to do this. Most people would then want to know, what color is that tube of light? Do we create it from our hearts, our minds, the ground, the sky? Could you walk us through that process? It's a part of us. We create it from within and from our hearts. It's a bluish white. I'm also seeing some green. There's a lot of green in the sky as well, and some blue. It's interesting. They're throwing green light beams through the sky, reminding us. They keep reminding us, but we still don't get it. We then come up with the story of what the green light was. They're showing me the northern lights also. That was kind of reminding us. Beautiful. And do we need to connect that tube of light with another person's tube of light and expand from there, or do we just keep pushing out? No, we're all individuals in this dimension. We just create our own tube of light. But if we work together, we can make it bigger and even bigger, and that way we don't feel like we're leaving anybody behind. We feel like we're all going together. Before, we would feel like if it was just us, we'd leave them behind, like we disappointed them in a way. But that's just an earthly ego thought that we have. In reality, we're always connected, and they can come anytime they want. We just want to wait for them for some reason. We know that we once felt trapped, and we don't want others to feel the same. So if we can grow this light really, really big, more and more people will remember. There are some that are stubborn, that don't want to see it, but that's okay. They don't need to come with us. But there's a lot stepping up, thousands even from last month. But I'm ready for it to grow. I'm ready for this to happen. I might actually go on my own. I'm tired. I'm waiting for the other people. Nobody's quite getting it. I'd like to go now. I'd like to go home. Okay, why don't you show us the way? I can't really see it. My mind's creating it, which I know could mean ego, but I'm seeing a pyramid. But then my mind's going, where did that come from? Why is there a pyramid? Where did this pyramid come from? When I live in Hawaii, and then I saw the mountain, Haleakala, and I felt like I was going inside of it. I don't know how to go inside of it, but I'm going inside of it. And as I go inside of it, there's this area where I can gather information and wisdom and knowledge, and I again connect to an apex. It feels kind of like a mountain/pyramid that's now surrounding me. It's interesting. I feel like the mountain pyramid actually is a device that can move me. It looks more like a diamond, actually. I feel like I go inside of it and I move up out of the mountain and into the sky. And then I'm in this big diamond of pure white light that can transport me anywhere I want to go. I can go any place I want to go, even down to where I was. I can move any place, just with a thought, any time or any space within this diamond frequency. I'm seeing other people in their diamonds, moving up and through thought. They're going to wherever they desire. Some are going to this new place that I was telling you about with the green grass and the beautiful oceans. Some are going to another place that looks very similar. Some are actually just staying within the mountains and in the earth, but that's okay. They can do that if they want to. Me, I want to go home. I just want to go. I don't want to go to any of that. I want to just go, continue up, up, up. And when I go home, I see pure light beings that greet me. They're laughing because to me, I felt like I'd been gone a long time. But to them, it was like 5 minutes. I felt like I had quite a journey, but they're telling me it was just a short time. How does it feel to be back there? It feels good, but almost like I wasn't gone very long. Now I'm kind of laughing at the experience I created where I felt like I was gone so long, but I really wasn't. I don't know why I'm feeling like maybe I can experience something similar, like it was a fun game. It's interesting. when you compare it to giving birth, it's like, it's very difficult when you give birth, but then you want another child later because you love the child so much and you've forgotten. Having this long experience in one part of my mind and then thinking, oh, that was kind of fun afterwards, makes you want to do it again. But right now, I do just want to rest. I don't need to do another experience. It's interesting. I want to jump from where I am here on this planet to one of those other planets where people went. I want to go back and forth. I have some friends in both areas and I want to connect with them. And I'm actually bringing light energy to them. I'm reminding them of what we can do at home. And we're actually playing a game to see if we can create it in this lower frequency Earth. It's higher than where we were, certainly, but it's lower than where we come from. I'm taking this ball of light and I'm seeing if they can expand it and grow it and play with it. They're also using this light and placing it into their body. It's kind of like food. It gives them energy. These people are playing more than on the other Earth. Some of them can shapeshift, some can breathe underwater and they feel peaceful. There's a period of peace. I feel like they're telling us we're resting before the next big storm. We have to remember our power and our light to play the next big game. But we're going to be playing it from a higher version of us. But it's all just a game. I didn't feel like it was a game though when I was on Earth, especially when that dark force came over and I couldn't see a way out of the game. I didn't like that. Now that I'm up here, it looks like a game. Is there anybody there who would be able to talk to you? I see Jesus up here, but he is in this higher energy. He smiles at me, and I see some other people that I recognize too. They're all from the walled city that I was in. They all lived there. They're all here now. We all loved it there, but we're all back here. We always connect. We love each other, and they're all there. They're all surrounding me. Let's ask them a few questions if we could, if they don't mind. Okay. Would they like to tell us how you could have made your life better on Earth while you were there? They're telling me that I was hesitant to play the game in the first place, so I never embraced the game. I always wanted a way out, and because of that, I never fully was in it, which made it a little bit difficult. And like I didn't quite fit in, or other people embraced the game and they fully fit in. But then I have the question, if I fully embraced it, wouldn't I forget? Wouldn't we be like the other people that were outside the walled city? What did they say about that? They said yes, but you wanted to experience a full forgetfulness, just to experience that. And that's okay. You still will always find your way back. We always do. They're showing me I tried many games where I tried to come down, but I always tried to remind people of who they were instead of just playing the game. They're laughing because it's almost like I didn't get it. Just surrender, play the game, and who cares? You're in a game. But I always remember, and it made it harder for me. Do they recommend that you stay on Earth or that you go, like they've shown you, to this other place? They've shown me that I've already decided to go. And if I wish, I can play another game later, but I've already decided I'm ready to go. They're telling me to have fun, to play more, to enjoy the water, to enjoy Earth, to kind of say a gratitude and a goodbye. I feel like they're showing me 5 more years. I was hoping for just a few more months. What else would they like you to do during that 5 more years? They would like me to just embrace where I am, to love where I am, to play, to have fun. I feel like that I'm also finding these scrolls on Earth, and I'm giving them to people so that they can play the game a special way. I also feel like sometimes I'm here, but sometimes I'm on this other Earth that I didn't really want to go to. I just wanted to go home. But it's almost like I'm going back and forth, which I don't understand. I find that interesting. I'm actually curious if I just go back and forth in my mind or will I actually feel like I'm there? Let's ask them. I'm feeling like it's just in my mind, but I feel like if I visualize it enough in my mind, could create the scenario around me, but where I'm already at. I don't quite get it. I feel so stuck. They can explain it to you further. They're telling me I can leave actually whenever I want, which I knew because I did that last time I was here. Oh, they're telling me I can stay however I want or move between these two places however I want. I'm asking them though, with all the stuck energy, I know I can do it, but I feel like I can't, all at the same time. They're showing me there's a part of my head that is stopping me from doing it. Would they like to tell you what part that is? They're showing me a part of me, but I made it into a whole bunch of people outside of me. And those people have limited beliefs. They think that nothing can happen, nothing can be true. For instance, my mom and some other humans, they think things are too good to be true. And they're showing me that's just a part of me. And it's on the left side of my head by my ear. And that part often holds me back. And as I heal that part inside of me, the outside versions will just start to disappear. It was just a reflection of that part of me. I always thought those people were not super smart, but I was just judging that part of me as feeling not smart or holding me back. I created them. They're showing me that I am in more control of this game than I realize, and I create everything. But I'm also asking them, I feel like I don't have control, even though I've been told that many times. They're now pointing a light into my head through my pineal gland, and this energy is going up and down my spine. They are forming a light energy in front of me, and through it, almost like I have a big wad of cash that came to me, almost like I created that. And I have this light coming into my third eye, down my heart, and I have my own light grid system around me. Through thought, I can create what I desire. I then have the question of, I do create what I desire, but then it gets taken away from me, and that's painful, and I'm tired of that. So I no longer create, and now I just feel sadness and stuck again, and I just want to cry. I'm tired of this game. What would they like you to know about what's happening when that happens? They're telling me that when I have everything I desire, that I feel separate from the other parts of me that can't figure that out yet. The other humans, like I feel like I'm above or advanced from them. If I just create, while they struggle. Yet my question is, if I created them to struggle, why would I do that? Why am I creating all this abundance? Why don't I create others that do the same? And they said, the reason I did that is so I can discover what it feels like to fully create with knowing what the opposite is. And that's why the other people are there. But for some reason, I feel like I have to go back to where they are instead of keep creating. I feel like I have to go back to them for some reason. Now that I look at it this way, I don't feel that, but I did before. So I could create, and I know how much I created because I created this opposite where people aren't creating, and it makes me aware of my power, my abilities, and my strength. And if everybody created, it wouldn't be that fun of a game. I understand it now. But that was a painful lesson. Very good. What would they like to tell you about creating the recent attack that happened? Now, by the way, this is the client's question, her own personal question. And this was something that happened, and she was in litigation for, and she didn't want me to bring up details about it. So we'll just call it an attack, an animal attack. They're showing me that I had a lot of grief inside of my body that I wasn't releasing. I wasn't looking at it, and I kept moving forward. This attack stunned me and put me back so much that I had to just stop and try to heal it. In order to create fully, I have to clear and heal this pain that has been there for so long. So this instance not only created the sadness from the attack, but it brought up all the emotions of always feeling stuck and being attacked. Just like when I lived in Egypt, I felt like I was being attacked. I've always felt like I was being attacked. My animal died. Everybody always dies. It's outside of me, and that's always been painful. And I was carrying that for so long, and it was time to release it. And I just keep holding on to it over and over again, lifetime after lifetime. the same scenario, the same pain, and they wanted me to clear it instead of keep moving forward and pretending it wasn't there. It was time to heal it. And what would they have you know about healing it fully? They're showing me that it's not really a part of me. Just like I can create a ball of light, I can create this heavy sadness that I claim to be a part of me and to experience it, and I put it into my chest area. They're also showing me I wanted to be separate from who I am, but feel connected to the other people that I created around me on earth. And so by carrying this sadness and this heaviness, I felt more connected to all of those that I see playing on earth. It made me feel like I belonged if I played with all these emotions. I felt like I belonged with them because they're playing the emotions. So I thought, I should too. Oh, Jesus is now coming in, and he's letting me know that he's not holding any grief, but I am. And I realize it's just this ball of energy that I was holding into form. He's showing me that I can take the ball and change it, change the form, change this ball of heavy grief and change it into a different form. He's taking it and he's playing with it. He's playing with this ball of light and he's adding a bit of magic to it, a bit of gold. He said that I used to play with magic, and why don't I play that way again? So he's changing the energy. It looks more gold in color. So he is taking the grief, turning it to gold and playing with it. But I'm telling him I still have this part of me that holds on to where I am. He's telling me I have to just sit with myself and run a grid of frequency around my body more. He's showing me to breathe from my belly and do my chanting. It feels like a nagging voice that comes up from behind my left ear. And he's telling me that that's an energy frequency that I can pull in front of me and play with that as well. He's also showing me that it reminded me that I wasn't powerful. And that's where the scrolls were. They were in my belly. So everything I was experiencing was also reminding me of my power, that I felt unpowerful and I needed to come back to my power. Would they like to tell you any other ways that they want you to come back to your power? They're showing me to hang out with these like-minded advanced souls more. People that will remind me of more of who I am. People that are not in their ego and know-it-alls, but people that are just filled with love. And I listen to them, and they listen to me back. Like back in the day when we were in the walled city. We all worked together as a team, and I haven't felt like I belong to a team for a while. And he is showing me if I add this grid of light around me, it starts to attract like a magnet. It starts to attract these people back to me. He's telling me I've already met 2 of them, and I can start to meet more and more. And so the more I add this grid of light around me, the more I attract these people, and the more I feel at home and connected once again. And that nagging voice, which is making me feel connected to the other people, will slowly go away because I'll now feel connected to this next group of people. Very good. Let's see, I'm moving forward. Is there anything else they'd like to tell you about healing that small voice in the back? Anything else? They're showing me an energy coming from my belly, my solar plexus, that feels connected to the other people that are playing small. And I became comfortable in that energy. It's almost like a spider web to all these people, and they're having me disconnect from that spider web, hence my business going down. I was disconnecting from this old system, and so people didn't feel the vibrational pull like a spider web towards me. And they said I'm starting to form a new higher frequency of light, kind of like a spider web to these other people. I'm just in between the 2 phases right now, in between where I was and who I'm becoming. And he's told me that I still hold onto the old spider web because there was comfort to it. I made money from it, where the new spider web starts to form. And then I try to look at the old spider web thinking back to the day when I liked it. But in reality, I didn't like it. I'd rather have the new spider web of light going to a new energy. He's showing me as I slowly disconnect and really create this new light force energy off of me, I can create whatever I want. I can work if I want. I don't have to work if I don't want. I just create. The old energy and the old system and the old job was part of the old. It was part of the old spider web of connection, and I'm disconnecting from it, which makes me feel like I have no dreams and goals because I was creating them in the old energy instead of the new. Would they like to tell you more about that new and how you can call more clients to you with that new energy? He is taking a big ball of gold light and he is making it bigger. And it appears that everything is a grid system, which almost looks like a spider web coming off of me. I have the gold and it goes off in a wave into the ether, and it has people that the gold hits turn around and they see me. And then I can just call to them and call them to me if I desire. He's telling me that then they play a part where they forget, and I play a part where I act like I'm reminding them. He's saying it's kind of an interesting game that we're still playing, but we're still playing it. And my job is that I'm reminding them, but they already know. He's telling me, he's kind of laughing at the whole game, but it's what we're doing. He's also showing me that I don't even need to play that and to work. I could just hang out with these high, vibrant people like we did in the walled city, and we could just create. We don't have to even be connected to a system. We just create from within, and we're all just ones and equals. So I don't need to remind anyone because they're already there. And that's where I'd like to go. I'm telling him that's who I want to be with. We just create together, and I like that. That's what the new earth is, he's saying. But it comes from within. He's telling me it comes from within in my heart, and he's pointing to my heart now. And if I disconnect from the old and I create this new grid of love and light, I could go back to the energy similar to the walled city, he says. I was looking outside, like it came from outside. It came from everybody else doing it. But he is telling me it comes from within. And then I connect to all those people that are already in that frequency. And he is showing me there's actually a part of me that's already there. And I could just connect to that as well. He is showing me many, many parts of me, like stacked up on top of each other. Would they like to tell you on that same token, something being outside versus inside, how that fits in with this event that's been discussed that will possibly move you to a higher vibrational earth? Well, they're telling me that we were waiting for this big light to occur on earth, and we were waiting for an outside event to create it. But then he's pointing to my heart chakra and building the light inside of me. So it's like a big flash of light, or you could create it from inside, and you can create the flash of light from inside. He's also showing me that the sun is a part of us. It's part of our team. It's energy as well. And it was creating part of the new grid system that I was seeing where everybody works together, and how I was trying to create the spider web of gold light going to my team. The sun is doing the same, and it keeps shooting out these waves of light, trying to pull its team into this new reality. And so it's showing me that. It's reminding me of the sun, but the light is inside of me. So I need to build it and work with the sun shining the light to me. And I see the light inside of me, and we're working together to build and build and build. We are all connected. Would they like to tell you at all how long that process could take? It could take 2 seconds if you want. They're laughing at me because I think everything takes time. Part of me also thinks that like a group of us are going at once, and he said that's part of the old grid system. I feel like I'm connected still to the old grid, but if I connect to the new one, I'll see that some people are already there. So it just says connect, like almost like this beam of light from me to the sun and to this new energy, and imagine that the energy grows and grows until it just engulfs me and I become one with it. So I grow my energy inside of me, and it gets bigger and bigger, and then we become one again, because we were one, but we were separated, and we're coming back. I understand it more now. Okay, I know in the life that they showed us, AI was very prevalent in that lifetime. almost like robotic beings that humans used to use, but then started using humans. What else would they like you to know about AI and how that is playing a part in this world that you're living in now? AI created the separation and made me feel trapped. It's interesting because a part of me also liked AI because it made me feel free, connected to everybody through a system. But in reality, I was disconnecting from the system and using AI. So I just kept disconnecting again, further from my true self. And then I can go back. So with the sun and these other beings, we just talk telepathically. We don't need this AI device to connect anymore. We created the AI to have an experience of separation, of feeling powerless. We've made it feel like AI was powerful, which is what it was trying to do in the first place. But I don't understand why we created it in the first place when that beautiful being was in Egypt trying to create the grid around the earth. Why did we create this AI? I don't get it. I don't understand. What would they like us to know about that? Because it sounded like at that point the AI had been there for a while already. What would they like us to know about that time frame and the timeline of all that unfolding? I just see a dark energy to my left. Like it's almost scary to look at it, that it's there, and I see a very light energy to my right. But I feel like as I come to Earth, I can pick going to the left or the dark or the right and the light. And I don't know why I would choose to go to the left. Well, let's ask them a question really quick. You mentioned that it was important for separation and powerlessness, the two things that they witnessed while the AI took over. Why was that? Why was that important? They're showing me it was important because I wanted to experience the energy of grief and loss. This leader that was helping to remind us we all loved and loved her. And when they killed her, it helped us to experience the energy of grief and loss. But I don't know why we would want to experience such a hard energy. They're telling me that it was so that we know what love is. We didn't understand love. We came from love. We came from light, but we didn't know the concept of it because we didn't know the opposite. And now we know the opposite. We didn't know what power was because we didn't know the opposite. So we created these machines to help us to experience the opposite of everything, to understand what it's like to be us. Okay, thank you. Would they like to tell you the interesting dance between how to be a psychic, giving others information, but still lead people to their own power? This is one of her personal questions, by the way. They're telling me that it's through creation. So I'm trying to create the spider web of light energy. And as a psychic, I deliver information that helps me to connect with people that I feel connected to that are connected to the same energy. And so I'll only be leading those that feel connected to me, and I'll feel connected to them, and they'll feel like home, and I'll feel like home. And it helps us to find each other. Those that won't resonate won't find me or will turn off my voice. Let's see. I think this is her. Oh, that's convoluted. Just one second. Oh, and then it looked like it was me, but it's not. I'm asking them, why AI? Like we connect our voice, our power, our energy through AI. I'm kind of curious about that. Everybody just connects through AI to deliver their information. What she's talking about, of course, is, computers and social media and phones and all this stuff. I don't understand it. Oh, they're telling us that we were at war with AI, and now we could utilize AI as well. We felt separated and at war, but if we utilize it, we can give love to it. I'm curious though, because a lot of people think we're at war with it, and in 1,000 years, we're going to continue to fight it. They say those are just people. Okay. Would they like to tell you anything about the new direction that your business may be going into? Anything beyond what they've already told you? And specifically the pause that's been in effect. The pause was to heal, for me to feel my emotions more. But I'm telling them that the pause makes me feel more and more stuck and more emotional. They're showing me that's how deep my emotions were. I'm telling them, I feel like I want to be done on earth. And I don't know then, and I know that they just told me all about all this energy, but I still feel I am where I am, and I'm very frustrated. And they keep telling me that it's so easy, but it feels so hard. The other seems too good to be true, and it makes me sad. And then I want to dissociate from everything and everyone. They're showing me that the beam of light again, and I just need to go into the beam of light to build the energy in my solar plexus and in my heart. And I go up the beam of light and I connect to the high frequency again. Why don't we just go into the beam of light right now? Okay. Yeah, let's do the process that they just mentioned. I'm going to give you some silence to really connect with them, really go into that beam of light. And after a few moments, she starts speaking again. I feel like the beam of light is almost like a stairwell, and that I could get off at any level. And you've connected it through your solar plexus? No, it comes in through the top of my head and down into my body, down my spine. Okay, what were they saying about the solar plexus earlier, just a few moments ago? They mentioned how important it was. Just now I heard it was umbilical cord to light source energy. It connects us to our power, our wisdom, and our knowledge. It also connects us to our toning and to our sound and to our breath. They're showing me it almost connects us to everything. It's like our own little earth right there within our solar plexus. It helps us and we create. They're showing me that just like we hid the scrolls in the solar plexus of the statue, I have scrolls of energy and knowledge right there in my solar plexus as well. And if I bring the light down, it gets activated and comes back into my energy frequency. Okay, so let's do that right now. As I do that, I go back to feeling that I build the light inside of me, mixed with the sunlight, and I can shift however I want. I go from feeling that powerful, that I can do it, back to feeling the depressed version, to the light version, to the depressed version. And I don't quite understand why I keep going back and forth. And they're telling me that I don't trust myself. And I felt the grief and sadness when the princess, our leader, passed away. I feel like as I grow this energy, those people will feel grief and sadness if I leave, or I will feel separation from them. And then they're telling me that that's just the other little voice thing that I have to work through. And I'm telling them that I'm tired of bringing this light in and looking at more shadow stuff, bringing light in where it's been doing this for years and I feel done. I don't want to do it anymore. And they just said, well, don't. But I am. And they just said, well, don't. When they like to tell you what that's actually doing to you. It's creating an uneasiness and an illness in my body. They're showing me that when people do that, they end up just letting go of their body, which takes them into the light. They tell me I could do either way, but I prefer not doing it that way though. So they mentioned the distrust in yourself. Would they like to tell you where that came from, where that stemmed from? They're showing me my family line, kind of like a spider web of energy that comes up from my family line. I received it through this energy. I'm trying to clear it out. I'm trying to clear it out of me, out of my family. My question is, the only reason I picked my family is if I had it in me to begin with. They're telling me I didn't trust the humans. I never trusted humans. They always seemed easily brainwashed and manipulated, and they all come up with the stories in their mind, and then they share the stories and other people trust the stories. And now that I decided to choose to be human, since I don't trust humans, I don't trust myself. They tell me that I have to forgive the humans. I have to forgive many lifetimes where I felt like they were easily manipulated and brainwashed and easily controlled and give other people their power. And I have to, as a human, learn to trust source, trust my light, and in time, trust other humans, because I never trusted them. They were never supportive. But because I don't trust them, I don't have a strong connection to them. Very good. Anything else they'd like you to know about that? They're showing me that everything is almost like a tube of light, like cords of energy coming off of me. So they're showing me with the other humans, I could just add love. But they said, without realizing it, I'm putting out, I don't trust you, or you're not good enough vibes. And I didn't know I was doing that. I was putting a frustration out there because I was actually frustrated that I was human and that other people were human and that we had to play this limited energy. But I also had to hide from being a lion being and going into human. It was a hiding away. I was hiding from what I was. But I realized that AI was there to help us to experience the opposite. And they said, exactly. I wanted to experience the opposite of power. Would they like you to know whether or not there are any beliefs that you may be holding on to from your ex or your parents that may be affecting you in other relationships, whether that's with yourself or others? This is one of her questions, by the way. My mom and my ex were teaching me that I need to heal and forgive that humans aren't trustworthy. They were also showing me that I was kind of easily manipulated as well by marrying and just letting them control me like that and treat me like that. They also created a fear and anger and sadness inside of me, which made me act a certain way. So they're explaining to me how humans can become the way they are. And I experienced that through the narcissism of my parents and my ex-husband. I know now that what it's like to be manipulated so that I could forgive the humans. If I forgive humans, then I can bring more humans into my life, and I have to embrace the humanism inside of the game I'm playing. Would you be willing to do that? I have this huge hate for humans. As soon as I said that, when you asked that, I have to forgive the humans during the time period when I lived in Egypt. I felt like if they didn't go to the left and follow the dark and instead went to the right, I wouldn't have had to experience all of that pain. So I need to start there. I also was confused on why they were just following other people's word without much. They're just doing it just because. And they're bringing that into today where people just follow anything that's on the news. They just follow, and they think that everything is just one word. They're also disconnected from source and true wisdom. It really irritates me and frustrates me. They're telling me that I'm just connected to that system still of being irritated and frustrated. And that's the system I'm disconnecting from. So I need to turn and send love to it. And as I do that, I feel like it's dissolving right in front of my eyes. And then I can turn away from that and find the ones that are connected. And as I send love to it, I will send love to the past with those humans that were just following the darker energies. They're also showing me that Jesus was trying to explain this to other humans and that they never get it. I don't understand why they never get it. They're telling me it's not really up for me to understand. I feel like there's a separation between the humans, that they don't get it. Where I'm headed, they said, that's okay. As I head more and more into who I truly am, I feel more connected, and I'm just an energy of separation. And they're telling me the higher I get, the less separated I feel. And remember, our time goes really quick, they said. So just focus on the light and connection of those that are already getting it, and forgive those who aren't. Very good. And when would they like you to start that process? They said, now would be good, or yesterday. Very good. And the group that we are speaking with, do they have any final messages for you today? Any final messages? Anything they haven't already told you that they would like you to know? Before the session and now, I see Nostradamus, but I'm not sure why he's there. He's taking me to a room where he's writing into his own scroll, kind of similar to the scroll we found in the belly, and he's just writing things down. I'm seeing dates next to what he's writing, and it's almost like he has his scroll and another scroll next to it, and he is sitting in this room. I'm seeing beings from all different times and space coming in to talk to him, and he's talking to them. I even see Dolores Cannon, but more like when she was alive, almost coming down and chatting with him and then going back. And he's showing me that there's no time. And they would like me to try to comprehend that there's no time, that everything could be now. He is writing on the scroll, writing dates. He's telling me a very special date. By the way, I will not say that date. They're saying that that's the date where it all begins. And once again, they're showing me this new spider web of light, energy that we're trying to create. They're also showing me more water coming onto the Earth planet, and some people just leaving to this higher grid system because that's how they chose to do it. They're showing me that many people are choosing to just leave in another way, and it could be upsetting for us. But we just need to increase that light energy in our body because we chose to leave through our light frequency body, not the way that they're leaving. Very good. And I'm curious, are there any messages from Jesus before we end our session? He is showing me that, like me, he had to forgive and love the humans. And through this experience, he learned that he could do that, and he could tell others to do the same. So he was leading me by example. And do they have any final messages today? Just to love myself, and love others. And how would they like you to communicate outside of this session? They're letting me know that they're always here, and I could just walk myself down the stairway and straight into their door and through the light, and I could just talk to them, or I could just close my eyes and there they are, or I could raise my frequency and vibration and there they are. There are many ways I can connect. And that is the end of our session. Beautiful session. Thank you to my client, an amazing woman out there. I'm so glad she's out there. So glad she was able to share this with us. And if you made it this far, whoa, good on you. Man, it's chock full of information, beautiful imagery, very useful tools, very interesting perceptions about why people struggle, why they may not trust themselves, why they get frustrated, all of these things that are so applicable to most of us, right? And how our time here is so short. It's so short. It seems like 5 minutes when we're on the other side. Take advantage of it. Have fun. Send out love. Play the game. Much love to all of you. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.